The quarterfinals of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational have been played, and we now have the game of the quarterfinals. And it was not an easy task to pick the best game, as there were a lot of great games. But I decided to go for the game Nakamura Nepomniachtchi, which Peter Lecco called the best game of the tournament. So it did stand out. It was a really great game. So I'll take you through that. I hope you enjoy. And it was a really great game. So let's see how it went. To update you on how the match is going at this point, Nakamura needs to win. He lost the first game, which means that he is behind. He badly needs a victory now that he has the white pieces. This is his chance. Let's see if he's able to pull it off. So he goes for 1e4. Jan responds with c5, which he usually does. Knight f3. And e6 is not a move you see Jan play too much. He is a great expert, and the knight plays that quite a lot. But e6 is sort of one of his rare weapons. d4 is the principled approach. C takes d4, knight takes d4. While the move a6 is played a lot here, theory is sort of established that white is better after c4. So a better move is to play knight c6, which leads to the Taimano defense, most likely, after knight c3 and then queen c7. Another move here is to play knight f6, which is a completely different opening, but it's also quite a possible move, where the main line goes something like this: takes c5 and knight d5 and knight e4, and there's a lot of complications, but certainly not a bad line. However, queen c7 is arguably the best line, and there are a lot of complicated lines. Nakamura plays f4, which is not the most common move, but certainly played a lot still. The most popular move here is bishop e3, where after a6, the most critical line nowadays, and it has been the most critical line for quite a lot of years too, is to play queen f3 with the idea of knight e5, queen g3, b5, and there's a lot of theory here. h5 even is possible. There's a lot of stuff here, and even Nakamura did play this earlier in the tournament against Alain Pichot, a game he ended up winning. So I'm sure Nepo was prepared for that, but Naka did something else. Played f4. a6 is the common response. Taking on c6 has been the most popular way to play, but instead Naka went for knight b3, which is strange, but it has been played a few times. b5 is the logical way to continue. Bishop d3, bishop e7, castles, d6. Everything is sort of normal here. My instinct says to put my bishop on e3 here. It's just an automatic move you want to make, to put this bishop on this diagonal, avoid any checks. But Naka plays bishop d2 instead, which is really interesting. Do not think it's a bad move by any means, but I do not quite see the idea either. Maybe wants to have some play on this diagonal potentially in the future, or just simply get a position. Knight f6 from Nepomniachtchi is the way to continue. Queen f3, bishop e7. Everything is very natural. Rook a e1, b4 from Nepomniachtchi. And this is a very interesting choice. Naka can go to a4, d1, and e2, and it's not so simple to pick where to go with the knight, because if you play knight a4, the knight looks sort of stuck here. It doesn't look like it's doing too much. I think it is the best move, but it's not so easy to see what to do next, as you sort of should play bishop e3, rook c1, and c3 next to make sure this knight does not get trapped somehow. And it does look a little bit unpleasant, but something like this would be a logical way to continue. Rook c1, and then eventually play c3, or even c4. when this knight sort of has some use here, where we can in the future go to b6. I also think knight e2 makes some sense, so we can maybe play g4, knight g3 even, start an attack, or simply put our knight on d4. However, Nakamura goes for knight d1, which I do not think is a great move. I think it's slightly dubious, as it is a little bit passive. But what he wants to do is that after a5, he wants to play knight f2. But unfortunately, I don't think the idea is that great. It just looks like it's too passive. And after a4, knight c1, knight d4, Nepo's pieces are extremely active here, and Naka needs to be very, very careful. And protecting the pawn on c2 is the logical way to go. However, maybe objectively, it is better to play queen e3, and then say that, okay, you have gotten the bishop here, but at least I've gotten rid of the pawn on b4, and my pieces are not so passive any longer. For example, castles and knight d3. I will now play rook c1 next, and it's probably better for black, but it's not so much better. But queen d1 was played, which is the human move. But after d5, and Nepo strikes in the center. It's a really great move. e5, and then another really great move, knight e4. And I'm sure this is what Naka missed, because it's not such an easy move to see. And this is the only way to really get an edge, because if he does not play knight e4, Naka can simply play knight e2, and he's sort of getting his pieces out on the board right now. For example, takes, and he's doing completely fine. And he can even start launching an attack with f5, which does look quite scary. So I think that white is doing quite well. But Nepo, he plays knight e4, which is a brilliant move. Naka tries knight e2, which is probably what he intended. Looks like a very logical way to play. And Nepo, he doesn't want to have anything. He doesn't want to trade his great knight. So he plays knight f5, which is another really great move. Naka also needs to watch out for moves like bishop c5. It's extremely unpleasant due to the pin down this diagonal. While it's also very difficult to find a great move. And it proves to be quite a difficult task here, because what is white supposed to do? If he takes on e4, for example, I can simply take back and bishop e5 check. I'll move my king, and now this bishop is in danger of getting trapped, while black is threatening also queen b6 check, attacking the king and the bishop. And it's sort of very difficult to do something about that, as for example, king h1 is met by many moves. For example, e3 opening this diagonal right here, and black is sort of completely winning after rook d8. It's just too many threats. Black is far too active here. So Naka tries king h1, which I think is a good try. Queen b6, knight h3, sort of the only way to play here. Again, if you take on e4, I'll simply take. And there are too many tricks here. For example, queen c6, and I'll play e3 next, attacking the pawn on g2 and the bishop on d2. Knight h3 was played, bishop h4, and there is no way you can avoid a loss of an exchange. The only way really seemed to be to play knight g3, but this is not really avoiding the loss of exchange either, as the rook on f1 is lost. And if you play g3, I'll play d4, activating this bishop on b7, and there will be a nasty discovery to watch out for. So I gotta take. But after here, I can simply move back my bishop and then put my queen on c6, where there will be all kind of nasty mating threats, which will be very difficult to avoid. So bishop c1 was played, bishop takes, queen takes, castles, and black is simply completely winning, as he is an exchange up. Nakamura tried knight g3, d3, takes, knight g5, knight takes g3, pawn takes g3, e takes c2, f5, after e takes f5, rook takes f5. Naka simply resigns, as his position is completely lost after quite a lot of moves here. For example, rook a1. A very great game from Nepomniachtchi, who played absolutely perfect. You can't I don't think there was any improvements really for him. So he played an amazing game. It's sort of a masterpiece on showing how important it is that you have active pieces. And the thing is, in chess, when you do have active pieces, all the tactics suddenly show up. There are tactics everywhere. And unfortunately for Nake's idea with knight e1 and knight f2 was simply too sophisticated. He became too passive, and Nepo exploited that brilliantly. After this match, Nakamura needed to win with black, which was a very difficult task. He was quite close to, got a great position, but unfortunately for him, he did not manage to win, and thus he was eliminated from the competition. And the semi-final matches are Wesley So against Anish Giri, and Magnus will play against Nepomniachtchi. So stay tuned for more action coming your way soon here on Chess 24.